Oh yeah, baby. Here we go. I got Kate Walker in the house. Kate is a newly best-selling author of the book of Candid Conversation. Kate, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jake. Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to dig in because, we're going to have a candid conversation right now. And I'm sure that won't be the first time you heard that. And I'm sure it won't be the last time you hear that as you go on this book tour and you talk about everything. But let's just jump straight into it, okay? Because your book is all about the lessons you've learned in your life, the stories you've experienced, the leadership experience you have. You are an executive leadership coach and expert. You are a human resources expert. So you got the life experience, you got the career experience. Let's start right here.
Yes.
In your mind, what has been the most pivotal experience that you've had to date that has impacted who you are?
Oh, boy. That is such a great question, Jake. I mean, I'd have to say it's being a parent. I'm a mom, and that is a life-changing experience. I have two boys who are right now 20 years old and 17 years old. And that is a life-changing, that is a life-changing experience. So being a parent, and then, as I share in the book, that I became a single parent. And that was making that decision. That was the hardest decision I've ever made in my entire life. But certainly being a parent is a game changer in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah. And we were talking before the show. One of the coolest things about your book is it's all about empowerment, and people are receiving your book in different ways. You thought it was going to hit this audience, and now they're saying their kids are starting to read it, and these other women are inspiring, and there's so many things here. So I really want to hammer this theme home, and I want to kind of know, when you think of empowerment, okay? When you think of empowerment, what does that really mean to you in the sense of how can you be empowering to others, and how can you receive and be empowered by others? I'd love to know your take on empowerment.
Yes, that's such a great question. And I had to dig into that a lot in the book because I was writing it to really figure it out. And boy, I mean, empowerment is being truthful with yourself. I think that's really what it comes down to. And sometimes the truth is hard, really hard. Sometimes when you know the truth, making a decision to make a change, that's even harder because something is comfortable, something feels normal. You don't want to rock the boat, tip the boat upside down. So for me, it's making those realizations, and I've lived that, where there were, I've had quite a few experiences in my life where it's like I could sit here and keep going because that feels stable, especially when there's maybe kids involved, or I dig down deep to find the truth and what is real for me and what would be empowering for me and empowering for my future. And then I make those decisions accordingly. So that's maybe part one of your question. And then part two, you're asking me about receiving, how I receive empowering. Okay. That's an interesting question too, because a lot of the empowerment I received is honestly by reading books, finding podcasts that resonate with me, finding mentors, finding friends that really support me in the ways that, in those authentic, real ways that I need support and upliftment. And I've been very fortunate to meet people like you that have been mentors to me that can tell me, can give me truth and can give me empowering messages. So it's really, I think, about what you surround yourself with. And I've been very intentional with that, I'd say in the last decade, of trying to be surrounded by powerful books and powerful people, even people that I don't know, podcasters. Those can be very impactful people to me. So at this point in my life, I'm looking out for that influence and that impact to help empower me.
Do you feel that when it comes to empowerment, do you feel that it has to be something that you seek out? Or do you find that some of the most empowering moments of life come from an unexpected experience?
Probably both. Probably both. I mean, I think you have to design your life in a certain way. And those are active decisions. And sometimes it's easier not to make the active decision because you're in a place of comfort. And trust me, I get that. But when you go outside the comfort zone, that can, by making those hard decisions, that can empower. And then Jake, I'm sorry, second part of your question.
I mean, that's answered most of everything that we needed to do here, right? But it's really about, right, like the idea of, and you mentioned kind of designing your life, where are we
Yeah.
seeking out like seeking out the empowerment, or are we allowing ourselves to be
Mm.
empowered through random happen chance events, right, or experiences?
Well, I think those random happen chance events are like beautiful miracles dropping in. And trust me, I'm open to that. I'm like, yes, let it come in to me. And I also think that that's a little bit of intentional behavior too, and that maybe get off the hustle train and allow to receive and kind of getting in that receiving mode, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
So I think that that's a really beautiful place to be. A little harder to be when, especially when you're used to the to-do list and the checklist and you got to go do the things. But if that's coming in, that to me is like a miracle.
Yeah, yeah. Shit, we just took that deep for this first couple minutes here. You
I
feel,
know, I
yeah,
know.
you
I'm
know,
really I'm concentrating very hard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're rocking and rolling here. So I want to take a step back. Let's go topical a second before we dig in. Right. One of the things that you are really honest about in your book is talking about the stories, the experiences you've had, and everything. And I'd love to know. You didn't always start out as being an expert. You didn't always start out on running your own business. You had a different kind of career that led to this moment.
Yes.
Walk us through kind of how your story of being a career driven person, and as well as being a parent, has evolved over time, and how that changed what you expected life to be.
Good question. I was actually talking to someone earlier today. My parents were real estate brokers. They were entrepreneurs. And I was so resentful about it back in that day because they were working 24/7 as realtors and entrepreneurs and talking real estate all the time. And all I thought was, I just want to go get a big, like sexy job in corporate and just and not be an entrepreneur and not be dealing with all that nonsense. So for me, I went into these really incredible global corporate jobs where I got into human resources on complete accident. And I'm so glad I did get into HR. I was a communication major, but I just found it completely fascinating observing leaders. That is one of the most kind of magical things in my career, has been observing leaders. So I've always been in my career wanting to work with the leaders and get with the leaders and sit with the leaders and be invited into those leadership tables, those leadership conversations, because I was learning so much. And to that point, from a lot of my career, I was in the learning mode, and I was maybe even a little too insecure to speak up in meetings because I felt like, well, I'm not smart enough yet. I'm still intaking. So let me intake. And it was a really beautiful thing a little later in my career when I had that shift. It's like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. I've been in the room long enough. I've been doing this long enough. I have a voice. I can say something. So those were definitely very powerful moments. So I loved corporate. I love the structure of it, the people, the assignments. But then there came a point a little later, a few years ago, where I thought, okay, now I think I'm smart enough and I think I have the skills and capability. I want to go out on my own now because my values are shifting, in that I want to go find some freedom and flexibility in how I build my day and who I work with and what I'm delivering. So that was another pivotal point where saying, okay, now I've done the thing. I've been in the rooms. I've learned. I've grown. I've been hungry for information. Now I can go out and help others, but in my way.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think empowered you? Right. Let's keep that theme
Yeah.
for this. Making a decision like that's not an easy decision, right?
Yeah.
Especially being a parent of two boys, growing boys, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
when you were making that decision, I'm sure you went back and forth 100 times and you evaluated some things. What was the deciding factor for you? What was the thing that ultimately empowered you to believe that this was the right decision?
Yes, it was not a decision made overnight. I can tell you that. It was not a quick decision because there's a lot to think about, especially with money mindset, which is one thing that I continue to work on. I've improved a great deal, but money mindset was very, very difficult, probably the most difficult, because I've been a little program like corporate is safe, corporate pays you, corporate gives you the paycheck and the benefits. PS, like, it's like, oh, don't leave those benefits. So those are things I had to process and think about very deeply before I made a decision. I go back to, honestly, like reading books, following podcasts, listening to other people that had had success, were further down the path, and learning from them. So I was in just a sponge mode, trying to just soak it all in and bring it all in. And then again, it's like, okay, I want to do this. So let me start maybe building a little bit of a website over here, doing a few tactical things, not only the mindset, but getting the tactical ready. But honestly, Jake, like when I left my corporate job, I had 0 clients, 0. And there's a quote, it's in my book, that leap and the net will appear. And that was one of my mantras while considering this decision was, you know what, sometimes you do got to leap, and let's hope that the net will appear. So when I left, I felt good about it. I felt strong about it. I felt like it was the right thing. But there was, I mean, frankly, I'm a human. There was a great deal of fear. When I left my corporate job, I had to send my oldest son to college in 4 months. I'm like, well, how am I going to do that? Like, how is that happening? But again, going into a little bit of that faith and trust and knowing that I'd prepared as much as I could. It's like, it's going to work out. It's all going to work out. And even with my son, what ended up happening his first year of college was he ended up getting some grants. And when I learned about these grants, I literally cried. I'm like, there's like the universe like answering. It's like, there's a net. Like that's a net that just freaking appeared for me. That I hadn't planned for it. I hadn't like schemed it. I hadn't thought about it, but I knew it will work out. We will make this happen. So you just never know. That's where you have to have trust and faith in your decision that things will work out. You just got to keep one step at a time moving forward.
I love that. I love that story and that quote, leap and then the net will appear. And it's kind of funny because, a while back, we were at an event together and we literally did this obstacle course, right?
Oh, yes.
And, as you're talking about this, there was this one thing called I think they called it the ring of death or something, right? And, I'm the type of person, I'm like, if there's a competition, I want in, I want to win. It's great. But this was a competition that yes, it was physical. It was you climb up like a 50-foot ladder.
Yeah.
You have to figure out a way to stand up on the edge of this mini box.
Yes.
And then you have to jump and capture this ring. And my palms are getting into the feeling again.
Oh, yeah.
And as you're talking about leap and a net will appear, and as you talk about being empowered and trusting yourself and going within, I get up there and I'm like, I'm going to do this, because I'm like, I would regret it if I didn't do it. And I think that's a huge thing too, that a lot of people need to think about is like, is the decision really what you don't want to do? Or are you going to regret not doing the decision more? Right.
Yes.
And for me, I knew that in that moment, I was like, I got to do it. So I climb up that ladder and I'm like, okay, like I'm shaking, I'm freaking out, I'm nervous, but I had to trust that the people beneath me had me. I had to trust that I'm going to go for it, and look, if it breaks, not great, but we got to go all out because I don't want to have the thought of what if.
Yeah.
And my quote that I'll tie into this story, I ended up getting the ring. It was awesome. I felt fired up. But the quote that I'll add to this story is that I would like to live a life of oh wells more than a life of what ifs.
Yes.
And I think that when you allow yourself to feel empowered, it gives you that chance to take the chance versus living in the what if stage.
Oh gosh.
And you have embodied that time and time again throughout your career, throughout the stories you've just shared. And what I'd love to know here, Kate, as you talk about this, is you've worked with so many people, right? You've seen so many different types of leaders. And a lot of our listeners here are leaders in their own way, whether they're corporate leaders, authors growing businesses, business owners writing books, whatever it may be. What have you seen to be the best ways leaders can empower other people, especially in business and life?
Yes, that's such a powerful question. I feel like I try to live that every day. I mean, as you know, I also work, I do HR consulting with many clients, and I work with groups and teams. And I like at this point in my career, I feel like that's what I'm doing for the majority of the day. I'm guiding people, I'm helping people. I now have 2 decades of experience I can bring and help you to make you better and help you shine and make you look good. And so it's almost like it sounds so corny. It's almost like a way of life for me right now, is trying to bring my experience and my knowledge to pass it on to someone else so that they can do better and have a better experience and avoid, mishaps or mistakes. And I know we all do that, but it's really powerful work that I love so much.
Yeah. I think you know, leaders can come in all different shapes and sizes, right? And do you think that there are different qualities that make leaders great in different industries versus or different sizes of organizations, whether it's
Yeah.
a business of 5 versus a business of 5,000? Is there differences in what makes a great leader based on some of these other demographic or psychographic
Yeah.
behaviors?
Well, that's interesting. I think everybody will have a different opinion on this question, but for me, I'm not of the Harvard Business School training background. And I don't want to. Like when I go into trainings like that, it's very complicated. I walk out of the room like that was cool, but I don't remember anything. It just doesn't stick with me. It's complicated and the 50 steps and the these and the that things. But I know some people like it and some people are great at that. And this is going to sound so corny and elementary, but I take a page from the Oprah Winfrey playbook, and that people want to be seen and people want to be heard. And that might sound very elementary, but I do find that leaders that I observe and watch, and it's like, what's that magic? It's leaders who are hearing people and seeing people, and that's something that I try to incorporate into my work as well. It's like, am I hearing someone? And even reflecting back and just saying, I hear you on that. And having a little bit of that empathy. And I feel like that's maybe a little bit of a buzzword these days, empathy. But for me, the most impactful leaders, and trust me, I'm talking about like the president, like the top leaders at companies. It's those leaders that I see people want to spend time with, people want to be with, people want to be in that energy, people want to know what the magic is. And it's not very complicated as far as I'm concerned.
Mm, mm. You know, it's fascinating that you bring up a lot of this stuff. I think a big part as well as someone developing into a leader, and I know this has been something that you've worked on throughout your career, individually and professionally, is the idea of boundaries.
Oh gosh, yes.
Boundaries are one of those things that are always pretty tricky to me. In a sense, it's really clear. It's black and white. This is my boundary. This is not my boundary, right? This is what I stand for. This is what I don't stand for. You have the boundary. But then you become an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden that boundary of, oh, I'm done at 5 is now, I'll be done when I'm done. I got to work, right? There become so many other things. How have you personally found ways, and I'm sure this is an ever going and ongoing evolution, and you're always learning new things because that's the type of person you are. You're always learning and adapting. But how have you found boundaries to work really well in your life? Are there any non-negotiables? What do boundaries look like for you?
That is a great question that's still evolving, I would have to say. And that is a question that boundaries are maybe something I'm still even learning and trying to put into practice today, because I think that especially when we're kids or we're young people or we're just getting into the career space, I'll speak for myself, we want to please people, we want to go that extra mile, we want to do the thing. And that's how I'm wired, is to really do all those things. And in this newer chapter that I'm in, it's like, wait a minute, I don't think that works for me anymore. I don't think those things are going to work for me anymore. So it's really having to identify what kind of life you want to design and why and how you're going to do it. I have one example for you. I used to, even from friends or family, I used to take phone calls in the evening just because the phone would ring. It's like, well, of course you pick up the phone. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. I pick it up. Yes, you always pick up the phone. Until I realized when I pick up the phone at night, it impacts my energy, my energetic, it impacts just my vibe. It makes me tense. It makes me riled up. People might be venting, telling stories, sharing things from their day. And I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good listener. But I came to realize I can't do that anymore. That's not good for my mental health, or just even physically. It makes me feel off. So a boundary I put into place to make me feel better was not taking phone calls. I mean, I don't not take any calls, but for the most part, I don't take calls at night because it affects me. And that's something that maybe it affected me 20 years ago and I didn't notice, or I didn't really care. But as I'm tuning in a little bit more to what's important or what makes me feel good, I'm making choices that make me feel better. And it can be something as simple as I don't answer the phone at night. So I think it depends. I think designing your business schedule. It's like I try to get my work done in maybe a 5-hour span. So really trying to be intentional and mindful and working on quality projects and because I think we can also be a little lazy with our time. I'm completely guilty where I might get into some scrolling or something else happens and I'm not really being as impactful. So trying to be more mindful. So I could just keep going on and on, but those are a couple of examples.
No, that phone one's a great one. As you were doing it, I was listening and I started going in my mind to like, well, I got some of these that I could think about, but I think the key thing that I took away from what you were talking about right there was like, you had to first recognize the trigger, which was the phone was ringing, right? You want to talk about habits, you want to talk about human behavior. You had to recognize that the phone ringing created the actual reaction of feeling tense and whatever else those emotions came. And once you were aware of that, it allowed you to have the capacity to know what difference and what change you can make.
Yes.
And I think that that's such an important part. And this is what, in your book, you give so many awesome stories and you share your whole journey. And I think like that's something that we can all learn from is you're never going to have it all figured out. You're just not. Like if you do figure it all out, call me and I'd love to know. Right. Like,
that's right.
Like we, no matter who's the most put together person visually, everyone's got their shit. Right. But when you can become aware of that shit, when you can become aware of how certain people or things or experiences make you feel, you're able to design a life more according to your true and highest self. And I think that becomes a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reemphasize again, it's tuning into how do I feel?
Yeah.
And that's not something I was willing to allow myself to really think about or explore, maybe because I didn't even know how or what it was. But as I get a little wiser, slightly, those are things where it's like, wait a minute, let me think about that. And I want to feel better. So how can I do that? And those are many different decision points throughout the day. So yeah, work in progress.
Awesome. Well, look, I want to go into here, our final segment of today's conversation. I've really been enjoying this. And how old are your kids, you said?
20 and 17.
Okay, 20 and 17. So we're going to do a little thing here for fun. Do you have your book with you?
I do.
All right. So you have your book. Your kids are 20 and 17. So let's have a little fun here. When you add 20 and 17, I love numbers, you get 37.
Wow.
What I'd love for you to do here, you're like, wow, I got good at math. Okay.
I know, because I couldn't.
What I'd love for you to do now is I'd love for you to turn to page 37 in your book. Okay.
All right. Let me find it.
Now, while you're doing that, here's something I want to address to everyone who's listening to this while you're kind of flipping through it and finding what's on page 37. When you have a book, you have the opportunity to pull content, to pull stories, to pull opportunities out of the blue. So this is a learning experience for everybody that I want you to take away, whether you're listening to this or Kate, for you, as you start promoting your book more and more and more, you can go to any page. And now we're going to be able to create an experience that will be a memory for people who are listening to this.
I love that.
That's going to be powerful. So page 37, we didn't prepare this. What's on page 37? And can you describe to us what's going on? What are you talking about?
Okay. Wow. This is an interesting page. And first of all, I feel like you're about to do a magic trick. So
I am.
It's like, okay, we're going to pull like a rabbit out of the air. Okay. This is interesting. I have a couple different things on page 37, but speaking of kids, I know you're just asking about my kids' ages as part of this thing. I do talk about childhood on page 37. So let me read this paragraph to you.
Yeah.
Okay. If you think your kids aren't watching, listening, and being impacted by your behavior, you're incorrect. Even if your drinking is social, children are still watching. As adults, we get to make our own decisions and run our own lives. Nobody likes being told what to do. But if alcohol consumption is part of your home or social life, it could be worth doing an audit of how it might be affecting you and your family. Is it hindering the peace and stability of your home? That's actually like a really that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
But I chose that one. Yeah, that touches on a lot of different parts of the book. Yeah.
And this is this is what's cool. You said there's a magic trick in here, and this is the magic trick, which is you just read that paragraph, which by the way was great paragraph on page 37. Everybody go get the book. But what it was also really, really great to hear about that is like that right there, you could do a whole workshop on. You can do a whole different sequence. You could do a series on social media talking about, alcohol in the family,
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
drinking, how it impacts kids. You could do a whole thing on that. We can have a whole discussion about your beliefs around these different things. We can have you elaborate on that. The overarching thing here is it's really, really powerful, right? So now, like, let's go one more. Like, go to chapter 8 if there's
Okay.
chapter 8 in your book, okay?
Okay. Let's see
And now
if I can find chapter 8.
and as we kind of do this, because I want this to be a learning experience for everybody involved, because I know your book's fairly fresh. You're going to be
Yes.
promoting it more and more, and I want to give you some ideas, and also I want to give everyone who's listening some ideas. What's chapter 8 titled?
Okay. Chapter 8 is titled Final Days of High School. Wow.
Okay,
That's
right
a
there,
doozy.
lot to go in there, right?
That's right.
But for the sake of our conversation here, and we're not going to go into chapter 8. If everyone wants to read it, they can go get the book. But for you, right? What's a memory that you have from the final days of high school
Yeah. Yeah.
that impacted who you are today?
Oh gosh, Jake, this is now we're going to have a therapy session. Yeah, I mean, and I write about that in the book, and that I mean, high school for many people is about trying to fit into that box, and it's always a very specific box, and it's a box that may not be your box. It's like this isn't my place, or these aren't really my people, but I'm here. I have to come here 5 days a week and do the thing and play the games and play the role that I have been tapped to play. So yeah, it's really a place where you're trying to be accepted and liked. But part of my learning and looking back is that we don't have to be kind of for lack of a better word, victim of our circumstances. And I write in the book that I actually found community by way of athletics, out of the school, off the field, on a field, or I found community with different people who went to different high schools, where I'm like, oh, I like this vibe. Like, this vibe feels pretty good. So it's hard when you're a kid, because you have to go to the school. It's the same place, same people, same teachers, the same thing. And you feel maybe when you're younger that you don't have as much choice, or there's not as much freedom or independence. So it's a lot of learning, boy, in that realm. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Gosh, so good, so good. The thing that I was really gravitating towards as you were talking about that is like this concept of like the need to fit in, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is I would say that most people have a need to fit in. Even the people that don't think they need to fit in, I think there's an element of like, well, not fitting in is fitting in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't really need to fit in. But by doing that, you're almost saying like, well, I need to fit in with the people who don't fit in.
Absolutely.
And it becomes this thing. And so I think that's really fascinating. And I encourage everyone to read how that experience kind of shaped yourself, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And that's the beauty of books, right? That's the beauty of books. And because you've now written this book, A Candid Conversation, you've now been able to impart your experiences and your knowledge without you being present. And that's already happening for you. You're noticing that people are reading your book who you don't know. People are coming back to you and saying, oh my gosh, I gave my book to this. I gave your book to this person. I gave your book to that person. This is the feedback I'm having. And you're probably getting some things that you're like, wait a sec, I had no idea that this could actually happen, or I didn't know that this part of my story would actually resonate. That's the power of a book. And so for everyone that's listening here, if they want to learn more about your story, or they want to pick up a copy of A Candid Conversation, where can they get the book?
Yes. It's on Amazon, as is most everything these days. Amazon.com, in the book section. It should be going out to thousands of different distribution channels, like any day now, Barnes & Noble, barnesandnoble.com, all those different places. Hopefully it gets into those more independently owned and operated bookstores. We know that those bookstores are so important. So I think at this point in time, you can find it most anywhere, but most recently it was launched on Amazon.
Amazing. Amazing. And how can people follow you directly, Kate, should they want to learn more from you or hear more about how you work with different organizations and leaders and people?
Yeah, thank you. I'm on Instagram at the Kate Walker. I feel like I exude a little more of my creativity on that platform. I'm on LinkedIn, Kate Walker SPHR. That's a little bit more of my business persona over there. And certainly katewalker.com is my website, and you can click buttons to find me directly. I do honestly answer most all of my own inbound communication myself. It's me. It's me on the other end, at least for right now. So those are some places where you can connect with me.
Amazing. And we'll get all that linked up here. I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. It's always fun. I've been following your journey as you write this book, as you dig deep into the webs of vulnerability
Yeah.
and get into this. And I've seen you evolve throughout this process. And now you're here, you're telling stories that you probably weren't just randomly sharing before, and you're living it, you're leaning into it. And I love that. And I appreciate you coming out here and being part of the show.
Thank you so much, Jake. And one more thing I want to touch on that you mentioned was, I mean, it's like who am I to have a story? Who am I to have a book? Like my story, like who cares about my stories or where will they impact? But I do think that if anybody is thinking about writing a book, obviously connect with you, but people probably have a bigger story than they realize or a more impactful story than they realize. And I am learning that now by way of the feedback I'm getting, where people are giving me feedback. I'm like, what? Like, what? You had what experience reading the book? So if you're thinking about it, I would say do it. Call you, connect with you, who can support you. But and then last but not least, you have been a mentor on this book journey starting many, many, many months ago, and have given me wisdom, so many nuggets of wisdom, and just being a great listening ear and giving me feedback. And even on this conversation, you're dropping more wisdom and ways that I can leverage the book. So you are a true friend and mentor, and I cannot thank you enough.
I appreciate you saying that. And, I agree with it. I'll wrap up. This is my call to action for everyone that's listening today is I just want you to process these 3 sentences. Your story deserves to be told. Your message deserves to be heard. And your book deserves to be written. I want everyone to process that. And as you listen to this, I want you to feel the empowerment. I want you to become empowered by Kate's words and her book. I want you to grab a copy of her book. And I want you to take those 3 sentences that I just said, and I want you to live them, embody them, become them, because your book is waiting for you. Your story is waiting for you. People need your voice. And that's all I got for you today here, folks. So we'll see you on the next one.